International. It's time for the news.
The Algerian diplomacy chief Ahmed Attaf has said that Algeria and the Central African Republic are in close harmony on the main African issues. And participants to the International Conference of Solidarity with the Sahrawi people reiterated their commitment to pursue the fight for the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and independence. The A3+ group has strongly condemned the foreign interference in Sudan, calling on the international community to actively support a consensual peace plan. And the United Nations has expressed deep concern at the increase in deaths among newborn babies in the Gaza Strip due to the cold weather. And those were the major developments. Good afternoon. The Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has said in the Central African Republic that Algeria and the Central African Republic are in close harmony on major African issues and have agreed to consult each other on all issues which are of vital importance to Africa. Mariam Barshi has the details.
Mr. Attaf, Special Envoy of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, is on a visit to the Central African Republic, where he was received by President Faustin Archange Touadéra. Speaking to reporters following the meeting, Mr. Attaf said the following.
I handed in to the President of the Central African Republic a letter from his brother, President Abdelmajid Tebboune. What I can tell you, and to sum it up, in terms of discussions that I had held with His Excellency, the President of the African Central Republic, on a number of points, the first of which was a deep appreciation of the Central African Republic's return to stability and security. The President of the Republic asked me to congratulate his brother on such an achievement, which is important not only for the Central African Republic or for the region, but for the entire African continent.
Regarding the main issues in the African continent, the Minister has said that the two countries' leaders are in a perfect harmony on their sensitivity, stressing that they are of major importance.
The second point concerns the major African issues, which are unique and extremely sensitive, and which require coordination between all African countries, in particular between the Central African Republic and Algeria. We have discussed all of these issues, and the President of the Central African Republic is in close harmony and symbiosis with his brother, President Abdelmajid Tebboune, regarding the sensitivity of these issues, and I think I can say that they have agreed to open this dialogue on all these issues which are of vital importance to Africa.
Mr. Attaf added that the talks also focused on the forthcoming African meetings, in particular the renewal of the African Union Commission that will enable both sides to meet in the best possible way the challenges faced by Africans.
The Secretary of State to the Foreign Affairs in charge of African Affairs, Selma Bakhta Mansouri, is in the Gambian capital, where she handed in a letter from the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to the Gambian President, Mr. Adama Barrow. During the meeting, the Secretary of State conveyed the greetings of the President of the Republic to his Gambian counterpart, as well as his will to work together to strengthen cooperation relations between the two countries. The Gambian President, for his part, expressed his satisfaction at the good relations existing between the two countries, hailing Algeria's leading role in Africa, notably through its rotating presidency of the Security Council, where it advocates African issues, linking notably to the preservation of peace and security and the fight against terrorism. The meeting was also an opportunity to examine the bilateral relations and ways of strengthening them. The Minister of National Education, Mr. Mohammed Saghir Sedawi, is taking part in the 14th Conference of Arab Ministers of Education in Doha, Qatar, organized by the Arab League Educational, Cultural and Scientific Organization in collaboration with the Qatari Ministry of Education and Higher Education. Mr. Sadawi will be making a presentation in the conference on the theme of inclusive education and teacher empowerment, a strategic vision for education in the Arab world. The Minister for Youth in charge of the Higher Council for Youth, Mustafa Hidawi, has received here in Algiers a delegation from the Office of the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, in Algeria, as well as Algerian experts appointed as part of the cooperation project existing between the two parties. During the meeting, Mr. Hidawi stressed the need to achieve the expected results of the project with a view to strengthening the Algerian government's efforts to promote and support young people, notably in terms of training and employment, and to encourage entrepreneurship and their integration into international and regional initiatives aimed at consolidating the role of young Algerian in sustainable development. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and the National People's Assembly has vigorously denounced the irresponsible remarks made by the French president as odious interference in Algeria's internal affairs. The APN stressed in a statement that these remarks constituted an odious interference in Algeria's affairs and an attack on its sovereignty and dignity in relation to a case that was being examined in accordance with Algerian laws. It also considered the remarks a blatant attempt to tarnish the image of Algeria and its sovereign institutions. It added that Algeria, which suffered the worst abuses during the French colonization, categorically rejects all foreign interference and has no lessons to be taught of. The APN stressed that such actions, which are unacceptable to Algerian people, have no impact whatsoever on its independent course, but on the contrary, they only strengthen its determination to protect its sovereignty and dignity, calling on the French authorities to abide by the rules of international relations based on mutual respect. To Western Sahara now, the International Conference of Solidarity with the Sahrawi People is still being held in the Sahrawi refugee camps of Boujdour with the participation of human rights activists from different parts of the world, notably one of the youngest climate activists in the world, Greta Thunberg. Jamal Salmani has the details.
On the second day of the International Conference of Solidarity with the Sahrawi People, the participants reiterated their commitment to pursue the fight for the right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination and independence, emphasizing the need to explore other ways and means for the mobilization of greater solidarity in favor of the Sahrawi people and all oppressed peoples, notably the Palestinian people. The Solidarity Conference was also an opportunity for the participants to discuss the plundering of natural resources in Western Sahara. They stressed that it is high time to put an end to the plundering of the Sahrawi natural resources, exhausted on a daily basis by the Moroccan occupation and the various companies that contribute in a way or another to prolonging the occupation and worsening the suffering of the Sahrawis living in the occupied territories of Western Sahara. In this regard, the Swedish environmental activist Greta Thunberg seized the opportunity to shed light on her activities for climate justice in the world, but also to express her solidarity with the Sahrawi people.
The people of Western Sahara have the right to self-determination, freedom and dignity, but they are being violently denied those rights right now, and the world is watching and is being silent. And I want to be one of the people who adds my voice to the calls for Western Sahara liberation. Everyone who can speak up must do everything in their power to learn more about the situation and to try to break that silence, because no one is free until everyone is free, and that is also for the Sahrawi people of Western Sahara. It is also a textbook example of climate injustice, how one of the most climate vulnerable regions is affected by the climate crisis very disproportionately, and how the people least responsible for the climate crisis and causing it are the ones suffering its consequences the worst. So, as well as the exploitation of the natural resources and the green colonialism that Morocco is trying to achieve. But we see through their lies, and we are going to do our very best to try to hold them accountable and to demand justice for them.
In the same line, German journalist Amiak Preiman said injustice against Western Sahara should end, highlighting the complicity of European countries in the plundering of the Western Sahara natural resources.
The message is just that we have to end this injustice. Like for 50 years, the Sahrawi people are like have to flee. They are refugees. They are occupied, and this injustice has to end. And especially, like I'm from Europe. I'm German. And there's so many European countries that are complicit in this. They exploit the resources. They support Morocco politically, and this just has to end. Yes, so Western Sahara must be free, must be liberated. That's why we are all here.
The other attending participants also spoke about the importance of supporting the Sahrawis in their struggle for independence and the importance of promoting the Sahrawi cause around the world.
Presenting how you can resist colonial power that is Morocco, that is backed by the imperialist power, USA and NATO, and the Sahrawi people are representing how it is to resist as a people.
My message for Japanese people is only a few people in Japan know this problem, so in this time I want more people to know about this problem and join the activity.
Let's note that the International Conference of Solidarity with the Sahrawi People brings together human rights advocates in solidarity with the Sahrawi cause from 13 states, notably Algeria, Palestine, Sweden, Germany, Spain, Japan, Italy, Colombia, Croatia, Chile, the United States of America, Portugal, and Lithuania.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and still in Western Sahara, the annual conference on foreign relations has wound up after 3 days of discussions on diplomatic action and ways to strengthen its mechanisms. The conference addressed all aspects of diplomatic action and its prospects in Western Sahara. Let's recall that the 3-day annual conference on foreign relations was held to make an assessment of the Sahrawi diplomatic action in light of reports from Sahrawi missions and representations abroad, as well as the political and diplomatic dynamics that the Sahrawi cause enjoys today. To Sudan now, the UN has called for more international support and for an unhindered humanitarian access to the country. At a UN Security Council meeting chaired by Algeria on the protection of civilians during the armed conflict in Sudan, the Director of Operations and Advocacy Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, Ms. Iram Wusorno, said that the armed conflict continued to severely affect civilians, including humanitarian workers throughout the country, despite repeated calls for a cessation of hostilities.
Sudan remains in the grip of a humanitarian crisis of staggering proportions. More than 11.5 million people are now estimated to be internally displaced, of whom nearly 8.8 million people have been uprooted since April 2023. This situation in and around El Fasher in North Darfur remains especially catastrophic. December saw further escalation of the fighting, including in Zamzam displacement camp, with civilians killed and injured by artillery shelling and reports of those seeking to leave the camp being blocked from doing so. Fighting also continued in other parts of the country, including Khartoum, Al Jazeera, Sinar, South Kordofan and West Kordofan. This is a man-made crisis.
Ms. Wusorno also said that the humanitarian crisis in Sudan has reached catastrophic levels, with millions facing famine and displacement amid ongoing conflict.
Sudan is currently the only place in the world where famine has been confirmed. Hunger and starvation are spreading because of the decisions being made each day to continue to prosecute this war, irrespective of the civilian cost. Our 3 asks to the Security Council remain unchanged. First, we need your help to press the parties to comply with international humanitarian law. Second, access. We need your influence to ensure all routes via road and air across conflict lines and borders are open for relief, supplies and humanitarian personnel. Third, funding. The unprecedented scale of the needs in Sudan demands an unprecedented mobilization of international support.
For her part, the Deputy Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization, Beth Bagdol, painted an dire picture, saying that half of the population is facing acute food insecurity levels.
The latest IPC analysis shows that half of the population, or nearly 25 million people, are facing acute food insecurity levels. This is 3.5 million more people since June of 2024. So today, 15.9 million people are in IPC 3, crisis. 8.1 million in IPC4 emergency, and just over 637,000 in IPC5 catastrophe. Conflict and forced displacement remain the primary drivers of this crisis, exacerbated by restricted humanitarian access. Sustained violence and economic turmoil have disrupted markets, displaced 11.5 million people, becoming the world's largest internal displacement crisis, and have also driven prices of staple goods to unaffordable levels.
That was the Deputy Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization. The A3+ group at the UN Security Council has strongly condemned the foreign interference in Sudan, calling on the international community to actively support a consensual peace plan for the country ravaged by armed conflict. At a UN Security Council meeting on the protection of civilians in armed conflict chaired by Algeria, the representative of Sierra Leone, Ambassador Michael Imran Kanu, said the A3+ group, notably Algeria, Somalia, Sierra Leone and Guyana, said in order to achieve lasting peace in Sudan, all foreign interference must cease, as must the external support provided to the belligerents. The A3+ group said reaching a rapid ceasefire in Sudan is the only way to lay the foundations for lasting peace and stability in the country after 21 months of armed conflict. The group urged in this regard the belligerents to fully respect their commitments in accordance with the Jeddah Declaration and urged the influential actors to work for an immediate and lasting ceasefire in Sudan. Meanwhile, the cessation of hostilities is the only way to mitigate the risk of famine and prevent it from spreading in the country. To the Palestinian territories now, the United Nations has expressed its deep concern at the increase in deaths among newborn babies in the Gaza Strip due to the cold weather. In a statement to the media in New York, the United Nations spokesman, Stefan Dujarric, said that the newborn babies, as well as civilians, medical and humanitarian personnel, must be protected in accordance with international humanitarian law.
The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us they're deeply concerned by reports that a 1-month-old baby in Gaza has died of hypothermia. That's what the Ministry of Health is telling us. This is the 8th child to die due to cold in less than 3 weeks. These deaths were preventable had the items required to protect these children been accessible to their families. OCHA continues to receive daily reports of civilians being killed and injured across Gaza due to the ongoing hostilities, which are also causing widespread destruction and displacement, as you well know. Meanwhile, OCHA also reports that humanitarian access to besieged parts of North Gaza continue to be constrained by the Israeli authorities.
That was UN spokesman Stefan Dujarric. And at least 6 Palestinians were killed and several others wounded in new airstrikes carried out today by the Israeli occupation against various areas of the Gaza Strip. The Israeli attacks hit the central area of Nusayrat, Al-Maghazi, as well as the town of Gaza. Today marks the anniversary of the Palestinian Martyrs' Day, which was established to commemorate the Palestinians who gave their lives for Palestine. It was declared 4 years after the first Palestinian martyr of the Palestinian Revolution, and it became a national day to commemorate the souls of the martyrs who sacrificed themselves for Palestine. And to Yemen, the UN Special Envoy to Yemen, Hans Grundberg, is in Sana'a to try to revive the stalled peace negotiations. His visit, the first in 1 year, is part of the UN efforts aimed at moving the peace process forward through the promotion of concrete actions. It is also aimed at securing the release of members of the UN, NGOs, civil society and diplomatic personnel who are detained in the country. And in Libya, the UN-backed National Unity Government says it has deployed armed forces and carried out airstrikes against drug trafficking smugglers in the western part of the country. Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has appeared before court in Paris on suspicion of receiving millions of euros in illegal funding from a former Libyan leader. It is the 5th trial in 5 years of former French President Nicolas Sarkozy. And to Canada now, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced his resignation as a party leader and will leave office of Prime Minister once a new leader of the ruling Liberal Party is chosen. His announcement came after a swirl of speculation over his political future following public spats with former allies. You still listen to Radio Alger International. That's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to our health magazine, compiled and presented by